Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Greg in Your Ear, the thing where I try to speak more quietly than usual because there's stuff going on and things happening. It's been kind of hectic this past month or so. As you may recall, I had mold in my house and thought that I got that under control because it was the carpet, and I threw out the carpet, but as it turned out, the mold had gotten into the rest of my house. So we've had some more problems with mold. There was stuff growing in the basement, actually right by the air conditioning and heater system. So it was just being, like, mold was being sucked up into our air system and then just being spread throughout the entire house. So things got bad again. I left the house for a while. Again, we had some mold remediators come in and they tore out all our stuff. I like to joke they stole our things, but it was junk. They stole cabinets from like a piece of furniture down in the basement because it had mold on it, and they took a bunch of insulation and everything like that. I signed a paper. It's technically not theft, but they took it and I'll never see it again. Those cabinets are gone forever. They were ugly cabinets. It's fine. They can keep them. So, that's been going on. And then coming back, one of the big problems that I've been finding is that mold gets into everything. And so it's not a question of figuring out, well, where is the mold that's still causing problems? It becomes a question of where isn't the mold. So during the mold remediation, they actually fumigated the entire house to kill the mold spores that were there in the air. And so for a little while, things felt kind of okay, except for in the master bedroom. And it turned out the master bedroom still felt bad because there was mold inside. Like I had a chair, and there was like this space underneath the chair that was like catching dust, and it was like full of dust, which was therefore full of mold because the mold was growing in the dust. And they throw covers over your belongings so they don't fumigate all of your things. Like they try not to fumigate your electronic devices and stuff like that. And my computer needed to be cleaned out too because it hadn't really been cleaned very much since moving in here and gathering all that mold. So the computer was full of mold. I had to open it up. I had to void the warranty on my power supply because I think it was still under warranty anyway, and clean out the internals of the power supply with like a Q-tip. And I'm still not entirely positive that I've got it all taken care of from the computer's perspective. But then later on, I realized that there's like mold in the headphones. And so whenever I would sit down to work, I would start to develop allergy problems. It was hard to do work over a long stretch. I'd have to, like, take breaks, go lay down, do something else, then come back to it. So I've been just trying to get my living space under control and having a really difficult time. For a little while, it started to feel like I was losing control of it again, and the house was just getting to be overwhelming. But then I threw away some things. Because there was that, there's that feeling of like I don't want to throw things away. There's stuff that is still good if it weren't full of mold. And finally, I just said like, okay, I can't, try to wait and see anymore. I just got to start throwing stuff away. So I threw some things away, and the condition of the house has improved a lot because those things turned out to have had a lot of mold in them. So we've had to toss a lot of stuff. The mold remediation was expensive. My wife has been bumped down to reduce hours at her job, but the good news on that is that due to the coronavirus stimulus stuff, until at least September, she's earning more than had she been working. So, that $600 a month thing that they do, like if they cut your hours strategically, which is what they did for my wife, then it winds up being better to be on that. But of course, they're not going to extend that. That was one of those things they were like, yeah, you could do that, and we'll see if maybe they'll extend that. But it's kind of like the Republicans have all said that they, there's nothing that they hate more than helping people in a situation of need. So they're going to try to end that as fast as they can. Otherwise, it might force companies to increase wages, and that is the last thing that we need right now is increased wages, especially on the precipice of a recession. Good heavens, can you imagine everyone feeling safe and like not like they're in a recession? That would suck. So yeah. Anyway, it's also going to be a sparse month for me as far as income goes because I've barely gotten anything done this month. Barely got anything posted. But I am kind of putting together something. I've been doing Steve for a while, and the art's starting to get, like I always say, like things come together, so like you always get better than where you were. And so there's times when you say like, oh, well, this is better than it was, and then you look back on that and you say, I really hated the way this was. This is the way I'm doing is much better now. And Steve's still got a lot of stuff to do, a lot of things to improve on, but faces are starting to look like faces. The proportions on that is better and everything like that. What can I say? The art practice has been proving results, but I'm gonna start using rigs, and I'm gonna do another comic, which I think I'll be able to release a lot easier, because if I use rigs, then I can just position the rigs. It'll be like I'll get into Toon Boom and then just set up the comic on Toon Boom, and rigs aren't perfect. They can't be used to do everything, but they can be used to save a lot of time. So I can just slap the rigs down, move their positions however they want. They'll be a simple kind of cartoony thing, like they were designed for animation. And then that way, when I need to do anything special, it'll be fairly straightforward to also do more dynamic angles and things like that whenever I decide that needs to happen. And then I'll have a comic that is a little less wrapped up in my personal art improvement, and that's more based on just going and having a nice flow to it. And so that one will actually have a script, unlike Steve, and hopefully that'll be fun and a decent comic to read, and it'll provide more content. Speaking of, I'm going to try and do another Radio Skyline before the month is up so that I can put that on Patreon, because otherwise I really am going to have like a couple $100 income this month and then a bunch of expenses, like tons of expenses, and my personal savings account is starting to get a little lean. Our joint account is doing okay, but the stuff that I earn is starting to dry up. So if I want to hang in there, at least on my end of the business and my end of bill payments, I gotta kind of put my foot down on the gas a bit. So that's in the cards, coming up soon. Gonna try to get more stuff out and focus more on just having a good story and fun jokes. Less abstract. It'll hopefully be easier to get into than Steve, for those of you guys who are like, man, what even is Steve? What is Greg doing with us? So yeah, that's what's going on. Coming up this next month, that's gonna be one of my goals. Battletech, I'm finally trying this out because I don't know, I've replayed a lot of old games and finally figured I'd try this out. But Battletech, some people were hoping that I would make Battletech into another sort of less ramble thing, like I did with the MechWarrior Let's Play, where there was sort of a story thing going on. And I went into Battletech with sort of an open mind as to maybe that would be possible. But I don't think the game's format really works well for that. There are story battles that I could focus on. But the game tries its best not to be very story-friendly. It's really weird. Like, they do these things, like, if you're a real huge Battletech nerd, all the stuff that goes on in Battletech is really important. Like, the succession wars are really important. So, like, who are the succeeding houses and what are they doing? There's the Inner Sphere, and then there's the clans, and it's kind of funny because, like, I think MechWarrior Online tried to do Inner Sphere tech only, but then they started to introduce clan mechs, and then people were mad because they were like, no, because canonically the clans are like more technologically advanced, so as soon as the clan mechs show up, it changes everything, the whole balance shifts, and like that's the point of the clans, but in a competitive online game, that's also really frustrating for players because you've had these good Inner Sphere mechs that were competitive with the rest of the Inner Sphere, and then the clans show up. And like in the actual lore, the clans eventually fall into infighting, and then that's why they don't conquer the Inner Spheres, because they start fighting with each other. And then the Inner Sphere, during the infighting, managed to sort of catch up to the clans. So they wind up being able to hold the line and keep their territories, so they lose some ground to the clans fall apart, and then the Inner Sphere regains its foothold. But in an online setting, it just like, the clan mechs are dominating, there's not like, of course the clan mechs are also infighting, but it's just a competitive game. There's not like a big picture like that vindicates this whole thing. So, yeah, this game is based entirely on the Inner Sphere, and it gets into the houses, and it like lets you choose what house you're from and all this stuff. So kind of like, if you're a lore nerd, you can choose these things, but then weirdly the game decides not to do anything meaningful with any of those choices. Like, I thought it was funny because they, right at the outset, like, I didn't really feel like I had much influence over the game. Like, they were like, choose your gender, but also you're working for this princess, And so it was kind of funny because it felt like they were trying to like choose your gender, choose your house, or not you get to choose your pronouns and your house and your history, and you're like, I used to be a, so you get all these like choices, and then they just lock you in on the first mission to not being like, you are independent, you make the choices, but rather you're working for the princess. And then I was like, oh, okay, well, why do you let me fill out all this backstory if you're just gonna override it with this, like, there's one thing I'm doing, why not just say I'm part of the Royal Guard? Like, that way I'm connected to the plot, as opposed to being some complete outsider with no investment in this woman whatsoever. I don't know, it was weird. And so then, like, they had a mission, and I didn't realize at first, like, in the lower left-hand corner, you see the mechs, and it shows you, like, that, like, for example, one guy's he's got all white and stuff. Well, the damage is displayed on your mech down there, and I didn't realize that's where damage was displayed at first, because I was just looking at the bars above the mechs. I wasn't really looking at the entire UI, because I was just learning the game. So I was still kind of grappling with, like, move here, fire at this, do this. Like, they told me how to do melee with the hotkey, and I couldn't figure out... Like, I still don't know how to manually melee attack someone. I only know how to do it with the hotkey. Because I think the game tells you. But it was like, press V, and I was like, okay. And then I forgot what else they said, and I was like, well, I guess V is how I melee attack. I got nothing else. I don't know how else to do this. So, yeah. So the first mission was like, everyone must survive. Was one of the rules, and I hate that for any kind of strategic game, because losing people is something that it just happens occasionally, especially in a highly RNG based game. So any rule that says like everyone must survive is frustrating, because maybe like a lucky shot hits the head and blows it up, and then your pilot dies, and that's pretty unlucky, but that's how RNG based games work. And so I feel like you shouldn't design missions where you say everyone has to survive the RNG dice rolls, because you never know what's going to happen. But worse, I didn't even know what I was really looking at. So I kept putting the guy with the biggest mech on point. And like his bars, there was still a lot of white and still a lot of red. Like red is bad, it turns out. But there was still a lot of white, and there was still a lot of orange, red, orange. And I was like, well, there's still a lot of like bar there, so I guess I can still take more hits. So I just kept leaving that one guy on point, and eventually he blew up, and it was like mission failed. And I watched the game like, boot me out and be like, you gotta retry that, that guy died. That's not good. It's not okay. And I was just sitting there thinking, I bet that guy dies at the end of that mission. Like, I guarantee 100% whenever something stupid, like whenever you're pigeonholed into something this bad, like the deaths of certain characters is also pigeonholed on you, but it has to occur at the cinematic time. And so sure enough, I got to the end of that mission the second time. Like, I took more care to look at like, alright, where is the actual health of my mechs, because I guess I probably should have thought about that and established that for myself before I just ran ahead. But yeah, like at the end of that mission, you are forced to eject, so theoretically you should lose your mech. The game just like through fiat is like, oh no, we recovered your mech, and I don't know how they did, but they did. And then and then like the guy that dies, so it was like, why did I have to keep him alive? Like the only character who should have had to live was the princess, and then my character, like, his mech could have exploded anyway, and you'd just be like, oh, we recovered you, and you were injured. Like, however that mission should have ended, it should have just, so long as the woman escaped, it should have been fine. But, no, you gotta die and lose your mech in a cinematic, fashion, otherwise, it's a mission failure. You have to fail at the end, not at the middle. So, that was dumb, and immediately lowered my opinion of the game, because, come on. Like, you give me all this illusion of choice, and then just like force me to go through this one particular thing. So yeah, poor show, Battletech. And then I had to look into how to like speed the game up, because it takes so much time forcing you to watch your mechs do things. Like there's a lot of pauses and a lot of waiting. Like if you knock someone over, you have to wait for the whole animation where they fall over. And like they don't just like fall over like efficiently, it takes them a long time. Like it looks like they're planning to sit down, like they kind of get into it, they're like, oh, okay, alright, I'm just gonna oh, no, I'm laying down. And then you have to watch them stand up, and they're not fast about it at all. So there's a lot of things that are kind of slow about the gameplay, or just watching the game progress, and it gets especially bad because the game for whatever reason, has this habit of, instead of throwing tougher mechs at you or better composed lances, it just like does RNG and then is like, yeah, this squad of 12 light mechs runs directly at your lance of heavy mechs. And like the light mechs have no chance, but they are taking 12 turns to your 4 turns, and you're just sitting there like watching them go and go and go and go and go. And it's really dull. I mean, it would give me a lot of time for characters to banter, but I don't know. Like, it's not impossible to imagine doing a story-based thing with this, but I'd have to, like, cut the parts where they actually talk to you. And the story itself is pretty unimpressive, like, as far as it goes. The princess that shows up, this Kamea lady, she kind of goes back and forth between upsetting me and like for at first I hated her because it was like, you're the princess's employee, and I was like, I don't even like, her voice acting's not very good and she kind of just chews the scenery, so I really didn't like her very much. It was like, this is sort of a suck character. I don't really want to be her employee. And then she showed up though later, and she was independent, and she would just like show up with her mech like on the back lines of the enemy and shoot them in the back, and she saved my butt, and I was like, okay, alright, I'm coming around. You know, she's actually not so bad. She shows up at the right time and does the right thing. I'm like, okay, she's a little overblown, but she's royalty, you know? They told her that's how you're supposed to speak. Okay. And then I turned on her again when they forced her to join my lance, and they replaced one of my guys. And like, I had a better mech than the one that she was in, but they made me bring her mech. Like, I couldn't put her in my good mech. She's got this family mech she's in. And so then I disliked her again, because then she was holding me back and then doing all this overblown speech and everything like that. Like, oh, I will not stand for my republic, something. And it's like, all right, you're slowing me down again, Chief. You know, like, why don't you just let me do my job and not try to be me? I am the boss. You stay on the ship. Like, stay on the ship, and then it turns out she had her own lance, because like the very next mission you have to control her lance, and so she had her own full lance, and it was like very heavily armed, and so there was no reason for her to take up space in my lance. She could have been in her lance doing her own thing, and I would have maintained that good opinion of her, but the game was like, nah, like we gotta make it feel like we gotta make her a burden, you know, so that you don't like her as much. So I kind of go back and forth between really hating this character, and I don't know if she's going to redeem herself later on or not, but so far she hasn't really redeemed herself since that one time she held me back, so current opinion is could do without her. Not impressed. So, yeah. I don't think I'm really going to do anything too special with this game, because the other thing that you have to do is there's a lot of, like, to advance the plot, you have to go through little missions or spend time. I'm not exactly sure what triggers the next mission to pop up, but you just do these mercenary missions, and they're like, not procedurally generated, but you know, there's just like a pool of missions you can do, and they're just randomly selected. So you wind up seeing similar maps and similar layouts, and as you can see, like this fight, you're just watching me like march from base to base. And these enemies are just totally overwhelmed. Like, they have no way to deal with this artillery thing I'm doing. Like, I've just got missiles out the wazoo on some of these mechs, and they are just getting obliterated before I'm even close enough to really shoot at them with the main guns. So, yeah, I don't know. And then their standard loadouts are not really all that efficient, the enemy stuff, so... Like I say, you just get like 12 light mechs, and they all run at you, and they're nowhere near your level. They cannot handle you. It is just pure bullying once you get to a certain certain heaviness of lance. I mean, maybe it changes as the campaign goes on, but so far it doesn't look like they really stand a chance. I don't know. There was one mission where they were like, bring a lance with a lot of mobility, because you're gonna have to defend these targets. And then like all the targets were within spitting distance of each other. And it turned out that just having a bunch, like, it was funny because it was like I took my heavy lance and I was like, well, in lieu of having lots of mobility, could I just have lots of reach? Would that be okay? And so I just figured I'd, restart the mission if it didn't work out. And then it was funny because I was just standing in one spot, and the enemies were all running directly towards me. So there was, like, you could have put a turret down. I don't know why they told me I needed mobility, because I didn't have to go anywhere. I was really able to just stand in one place and fire missiles until there was no more enemies. It's like, oh, okay. I don't know why you told me to have mobility. There's only one place here. Like, I didn't have to go anywhere else. I was worried there was going to be like 2 separate bases or 3 separate bases, and I was going to have to jog back and forth between them to cover them, or split my lance or something like that. But nah, the game didn't really want to challenge me like that. It was just like, what we meant was there was going to be enemies attacking from all directions, so if you had short-range weapons, you were going to need a lot of mobility. But yeah, if you're just packing enough missiles to bring down the entire attacking squad of 12 light mechs, then no problem. You got this. You got this fully under control. So yeah. The only problem is just that you need someone with this sensor lock ability, because otherwise you can't shoot at things. Like, you can see them as little red dots, but you can't fire at where they are. So you need the sensor lock thing. But yeah. I don't know what else to say. The world's kind of in chaos. The world's gone mad. We got a lot of stuff going on, and I don't know. It's just like exhausting and incredibly disappointing. Just the way everything's been handled, and the type of people that the establishment is set up to try to be like, these are going to be our leaders, and then they just. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to get too into it, but it's just upsetting. But that's politics and everything. That's not like, what am I doing? What's going on? What do I think of Battletech? I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I really want to bring up or talk about, or anything else that's coming along. We got some mold in the floorboards in the master bedroom, so we had to tear that up. But it's okay, because those floorboards actually, they were expensive, but turned out to actually be cheaply made. So getting rid of them was for the best, something we had to do. And anyway, you can hear Claudia doing construction in the other room. So since she is doing that, I guess I'll go ahead and I'll wrap up this video, and then that way we won't hear a lot of saw blades and hammering over the recording. And I will catch you guys next time. You guys have a great day and a great week.